Then in 1995, after the end of the Gulf War and so forth, the U.S. was sort of lowering the number of troops in Europe. The U.S. departed from an American military base near Bremen and gave it to the Germans. And so the Germans decided to move the remnants of what still was sort of a German logistics training base from this military base built in 1938 to the American base, freeing up a 75-acre, nice brick buildings, campus-type location. Now, in the meantime, in the mid-1990s, early 1990s, the shipbuilding industry that had been key to the economy of Bremen had begun to decline. And so the Bremen economy was in the doldrums. And people had begun to think, we need to find something that will kind of jumpstart our economy. And they knew how much the Route 128 computer stuff in Silicon Valley had done for Massachusetts and California. And they knew it was related somehow to higher education. So they began to think maybe we could develop a college on this military base. Now there was a University of Bremen, a state-supported university already in Bremen. And there was essentially a polytechnic institution that was down in the old city of Bremen itself. And so the idea arose to move this polytechnic institution to this new campus. But some of the politicians began to say, well, we need to really sort of jumpstart our economy. We need to bring in new ideas and new people. And if we just move this polytechnic institution from this old campus to this new campus, it hasn't really changed the mix of technology and experts and so forth. We need something better than that. So that upset the polytechnic institution, but they decided we simply had got to have a better idea than that because our economy is in the doldrums, and let's do something really exciting. The senator from that district, a woman named Bringefilta Kars, who's actually at Rice this semester, told me that you don't do anything foolish if you know it's foolish. And she said it was foolish to spend 500 million Deutschmark just to move this college from this campus to that campus. So she called together the president of the University of Bremen, and he got together 6 or 8 faculty, and they began to kind of brainstorm. And they said, maybe, let's see if we can get some American university with all its expertise to establish a branch of that university here in Bremen. And they all recognized that German higher education, although it had been the best in the world, say until 1920 or so, that German higher education was now a sort of a basket case. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal last week about sort of how disastrously weak and disorganized and so forth German higher education is. So these 6 or 8 faculty met in the president's office at the University of Bremen, and they said, well, who should we ask in the United States? I mean, there are thousands of colleges. And so they got a list to the AAUP universities, about 60. They said, well, here are sort of the best universities. Do any of you know anybody personally who teaches at these institutions so that we could call them? And so one person says, yeah, I know somebody at MIT, and I know somebody at Chicago, I know somebody at Indiana, I know someone at Berkeley and Stanford. And a very famous mathematician named Hans Otto Patkin, who had lectured here at Rice, and had been so thrilled by Rice, he tried to get his daughter to come here, said, yeah, I know somebody at Rice, I know a mathematician, Ronnie Wells. So on October 22, about 11 o'clock in the morning, Hans Otto Patkin picked up the telephone and called Ronnie Wells. Now, Ronnie Wells wasn't just a mathematician who knew Hans Otto Patkin. He actually had spent a postdoc year on a Humboldt Fellowship at the University of Bremen. Spoke German, and his wife was from Bremen. But his wife wasn't just from Bremen. Her great-great-grandfather had been the greatest mayor in the history of Bremen and had recognized that the river was silting up. They needed to make another port down near the mouth of the river, so he had built Bremenhaven. So her family name was a big name. And Hans Otto Patkin knew Ronnie Wells. He calls Ronnie Wells on October 22 and said, hey, we just got this idea. We're trying to think of American universities. Would Rice be interested in having a branch campus at Bremen? Now, Ronnie thought, well, it seems kind of far-fetched, but I'll call Malcolm. Malcolm, it turns out, at 4 o'clock, had an opening, a 30-minute opening. Malcolm is Malcolm Gillis, president of Rice. And so Ronnie Wells went over to talk to Malcolm. Now, about 8 or 10 years before, when Malcolm was at Duke, he had gone to Germany and had realized the poor nature of German universities and had proposed at Duke develop a kind of a German initiative. But the Duke president said not interested. And so Malcolm had been sort of, chopping at the bit. And so Ronnie Wells shows up and says, I got a phone call from some guy in Bremen saying, what about us having a branch campus in Bremen? In 10 minutes, Malcolm was on the phone to Bill Barnett, who was here last week. 5 minutes later, he's saying, okay, you and, let's say, David Austin, the provost, and Sidney Burris, Dean of Engineering, and Jim Kinsey, the Dean of Science, go to Bremen. So, and like in 20 minutes, Malcolm decided, and the Bill Barnett said, go for it. Ronnie calls Hans Otto Paquin. He's amazed that they can make such a quick response. And he's also amazed it's not just sending over, somebody in Malcolm's office, but he's sending the provost and 2 deans. And so they quickly get together people in Bremen and say, this is a high-level delegation. A few weeks later, they go to Bremen. The plane is canceled. They get there a day late. But the Bremen people just put on an incredible show. They are amazed that Rice moved so quickly. They hadn't yet heard from Berkeley. And they thought for a while we'll kind of have a joint project. They ended up saying, forget the other universities, Rice moves. And so they just sort of wowed the Rice people a 2-day visit. And then Malcolm says, y'all's turn to come to Houston. So in February, a big group comes to Houston. I mean, it's a who's who of the academia, including a lot of businessmen. They realized very quickly you're going to have to re-raise support. So they had the head man of the Mercedes-Benz factory in Bremen. They had a guy who was head of Beck's Beer, who had made Beck's Beer the largest international selling beer in the world. And he came to Rice. And he was a great, big, blustery guy, but he was also wowed by Rice. And they stayed 3 or 4 days here. They went to NASA. They went out to Kent Anderson's ranch. They went to the colleges. February 10th, they signed the memorandum of understanding that Rice would help. But the interesting thing is that when, at the end of that 2-day visit, back in November, at breakfast, David Austin, they had said, well, there's no way Rice is going to open a branch university. We don't do that. We don't have a branch university in Austin, much less not going to do it in Germany. So let's propose that they don't have a branch, but that they do something even bolder, that they create Europe's first private university. Raise their own money, make it like an American university. They say that to the Germans, they're kind of taken aback, and then they are excited by it. When they come to Houston in February, they accept that goal. They go back to Germany with the idea. Remember, Germany has no private universities. Education is free. It takes 8 or 10 years to get your first degree. Colleges, universities are incredibly loose. You can go to college for years. Classes of 1,000 people. Never take an exam, never write a paper, never read a book, just end up after 7, 8 years, 10 years, take some kind of exam, get a degree. Loosey-goosey, not guaranteed of a job. It's a disastrous education system. And they saw Rice, residential colleges, a campus, instruction in English. And they said, let's create a Rice in Germany. Let's have a university with undergraduates and PhDs. Let's have people live in residential colleges. Let's have all instruction in English. Let's have a BA, MA, PhD degree structure. Let's have a curriculum analogous to Rice's. Let's have 50% German students, 25% U.S. students, 25% from around the world. Let's create a high-quality, selective American private university in Germany. Can it possibly work? Key was getting a really important person to be chairman of their board. And they decided at the very beginning that the leading academician in Germany was a man named Dr. Reimer Lust. Dr. Reimer Lust was the president of the Max Planck Institutes, all of them. He was head of the Humboldt Foundation. He had been head of the European Space Agency. And they talked to him, and he for 15 years had been thinking that German higher education had to be totally renovated. And the way to do it was to make it like American universities. He accepted. Interestingly, Reimer Lust, I went over to see him, and I rode the train from Bremen to Hamburg. He sent his driver to get me. It's not like an American university. I don't know anything, maybe you, but most faculty don't send their driver. The driver rolls up, in his silver BMW, and it takes me back to Dr. Lust's office. It's not a very big office. And he told me his story. He was a young, non-commissioned officer in World War II, naval officer, was captured, was sent to a POW camp in Mejia, Texas, near Waco. All the other officers were real officers and had college degrees. He didn't have his degree yet. And the German officers, being German, didn't just while away their time. Officers didn't work out in the woods or, cut pulpwood like regular guys did. They were officers. And so they got like $20 a month, and they began offering instruction. They formed a little college. They gave exams. They gave lectures. They got photocopies of the textbooks in Germany. And Reimer Lust, as a young man, took 2 years of courses as a German POW in Mejia, Texas. At the end of the war, goes back, goes to a German university, asked to get credit. They say, "Are you crazy?" And then he shows the professor he had been using his book. So he got college credit, gets his PhD, becomes the most famous academician in the field of science. And it started in Texas. And he showed me with great pride that Malcolm Gillis had gotten him named honorary citizen of Texas, from a POW to honorary citizen. And he was thrilled that Rice University from Houston had come to Germany to help reform higher education. They chose a president, Fritz Schaumann, the city-state of Bremen, whose mayor and president is Mayor Scherf, who came to Houston, saw Houston, toured the campus, had dinner at Malcolm's house, became the #1 cheerleader of this new university. Is pushing this institution. And the talk I gave on Lovett a couple of weeks ago, they read a version of that. And they decided Lovett came to Germany to learn how to build a university from the beginning. And now they are sort of reversing the favor, and they want to do Rice like that. They are planning a grand academic opening this September 1920, 2001. They want to bring together speakers and have a great sort of a celebration. And they plan to begin for offering classes. They've chosen deans, they're hiring faculty, they're attracting students. But Europe's first private university based explicitly on Rice. Malcolm Gillis is on the board. James Baker is one of their trustees. Rice faculty are helping them put together their curriculum. It's going to be a replica of Rice in Germany. If it works, they hope it will not just simply jumpstart the economy of Bremen, but they hope it will be such a novel adventure. It will show to all of Europeans how they need to revolutionize their higher education. They are incredibly upbeat. I mean, Rice sent me there to talk to these people because I was supposed to do a little history of this founding this university. And so I talked to the academicians, the politicians, the president of the city, the president of Mercedes-Benz, of Berks Beer, of Deutsche Bank, and so forth. They all are just thrilled with the potential. They're not sure that the Germans will raise money because, as the president of the University of Bremen told me, people here assume that the government pays everything because you pay about 50% of your income in taxes. So the idea of paying tuition is anathema. But they believe that they have first-rate instruction, a residential college experience, instruction in English, with a curriculum compatible with most universities around the world, it'll work. And I think if it works, it can begin to sort of change the whole nature of higher education. Who knows? But if it works, it will be Rice's impact in a way we could never have imagined 3 or 4 years ago. And I have to say, they're worried about students being willing to pay and people being willing to contribute money. But the city-state gave them 238 million Deutschmarks to start off. So that's a good start. So this September, Rice is returning the favor that Leipzig did to Lovat in 1912. And the little piece of Rice is going to start blooming in Europe. So Rice is reaching not just out to the people of Houston and the people of Texas, but literally it's reaching out across the world. Okay, time to stop. Any questions? I don't think any questions like that. Are there any questions? It sounds, I'm fixing to fight you if you have a question. I don't mean it that way. Any comments? Okay.
I'm surprised about that one thing. I see the public all the time, which is a running track. You know, any stories or anecdotes about
Well, technically that running track is not Rice property because the city right-of-way is 8 or 10 feet inside the sidewalks. So it's on, we call it the Rice campus. But I think in a very literal sense, that granite path doesn't belong to Rice. But we think of it as Rice. And it's true that years before that happened, it was a great place to sort of run and to jog around the campus. And now, you know, on a pretty day or a pretty evening, it's just sometimes stunning to drive around the college campus and notice how many Houstonians are using the perimeter of Rice as a place to run and breathe carbon monoxide and so forth. But it is an asset to the city of Houston that, you know, we are proud of. Okay.
Jesse Jones founded the Texas Commerce Bank.
Uh-huh.
Did Rice loan them money, and did they get out of the banking business as a result?
By that time, I think there was enough money in Houston to do it. But I mean, it's for the first 10 or 15 years, Rice is, and by the time the university starts opening, then they're spending more of the money on academic measures. But they become actually a whole lot more conservative. But they really, by 1918 or so, they're really cutting back on their loaning of money. Although they still, down to World War II, are loaning out little bits of money. But they have a very conservative policy of raising money.
John, isn't there something in the NASA exchange where it will come back to us?
Supposedly, if NASA ever decided to quit, the property would revert to Rice. So you're advocating cutting NASA budget? I don't. But I think that's true. I just can't imagine that ever happening. Ann?
Connie Wells was over here this week and
Uh-huh.
brought a woman who's going through their development work, and she's been meeting with some of us to learn about alumni work and fundraising. She mentioned that there's about 1,600 applicants for the job, faculty positions, of maybe 100
Yeah.
some.
Ultimately,
Said
100.
It's the top people, you know,
Well, you know, it's amazing. I mean, this Wall Street Journal article last week spells out the problems around. But every place I went to in Germany, talking to businessmen, scientists, professors, university presidents, they were all saying German higher education is just going down the tubes. And that the idea of having an American or Rice-type plane, that we will be overrun with applications, and we'll get the very best people applying. So I think faculty is no problem. The concern they have, the biggest concern is, will students be willing to pay tuition? They don't mind paying tuition leaving Germany to come to Houston or going, you know, to Stanford or someplace, but they think if they stay home that the German government is supposed to pay their education. So the idea is that we have got to show that the instruction, the sort of quality of the learning experience is so superior to what you get at University of Heidelberg or somewhere that you will be happy to pay the money. And they are sort of gambling that that'll work. But when you see the location, I mean, I first thought, a former military base? I mean, when you drive onto the campus, it looks like a little liberal arts college in New England. I mean, except it's flat, but it's beautifully treed, and you know, it's landscapes and playing fields and handsome brick buildings. And there's 3 sets of dormitories that are kind of grouped that look ready-made to have colleges, and they're going to have 3 residential colleges. I mean, it's when you have this sense, this couldn't be a military base. This is clearly a college, and that's what it is going to be. Hope it works. Okay. There's going to be an exchange agreement, but there's not going to be a huge deal because we're not interested in, you know, sending off, you know, a lot of faculty. But there will be exchange agreements between faculty, staff, and students. But it's going to be a quite small place. They hope within 5 years. There's sort of contract with the city, as within 5 years they'll have 800 undergraduates and 400 graduate students. But of their undergraduate students, they want, you know, 50% German, 25% U.S., and 25% Asia and the rest of the world. And so that's not a whole lot. They want it to be just a place where American students go to live in Germany and have English instruction and get a degree. I mean, then it would become an American university. They want it to be truly an international university. But one of the advantages for us is that certainly engineering and the science students have a harder time taking courses abroad because the curriculum doesn't sort of mesh with ours. I mean, if you're interested in art history, it's easy just to go to Florence or someplace and just sort of absorb art history. But it's harder to do that in, you know, civil engineering. And so if this university will have engineering and science courses that fit the American curriculum, it will be a real godsend to our engineering and science students. And it used to be that not many Rice students studied abroad, but in recent years, I heard figures like something like 35% of Rice students now get some kind of significant overseas, you know, experience in the course of their 4 years. But not necessarily a semester abroad. But I think that there is a much, much wider recognition on the part of students that an important part of education is spending time in a different culture. And Bremen is a very handsome city. The downtown has a great medieval cathedral and medieval state, you know, city house, and it's a beautiful little city. So, if you're an American student and didn't know German, it'd be a great place to spend a year or 4 years.
Aren't they going to have problems, though, with the fact that their academic program is not going to mesh with the academic program that's pervasive in Germany? I mean, it may not be working well, but it's what is there and what is influencing.
Well, it's the problem, but they believe that they can work it in such a way that already increasing numbers of German universities are beginning to realize they need a degree program much like ours, that the system is just simply not working. And they believe if they train international students for international employment, that an American-style degree program suits them better for employment worldwide than the kind of archaic German degree. But a number of older German universities are developing, you know, a BA, MA, PhD. They just realize that's, you know, the idea of spending 6 or 8 or 10 years to get the equivalent of a bachelor's degree just doesn't work anymore. But they do say they have problems. They don't know that it's going to work. Can they get philanthropy? Well, students pay money. But they are betting that it will. Okay? Yeah, they're going to have a science park. I mean, they don't expect that. They want it to be Rice-like. So they think, you know, conceivably, it might have 4,000 or 5,000 students 25 years from now. But they don't have in mind, you know, a 50,000 student campus. And so there is land around there, science parks, and it's near a river, and there's kind of, you know, so they think they have the grounds for something about the size of Rice. And that's all they really want. But again, they think that over and over again, they say that the real significance is not just what it would do for Bremen, but if this works and works well, it will change the nature of European higher education. That's an incredibly bold goal. But Reimer Lust, this great man who's 78, said, I'm doing this at the end of my life. I think this is the most important thing happening in German higher education. You know, so it's kind of a shot in the dark, but it's exciting. Okay, thanks very much.